Going to show you some amazing remote viewing right now. The subject is Bob Lazar. Hi there, crypto fans. Hi there, remote viewing fans. Dick Allgire here. A beautiful day at Ethereum Place. Bob Lazar is in the news currently because he just did an amazing podcast with Joe Rogan, and there is a new documentary about his story that's on Amazon Prime. Back in 2023, the remote viewers at Future Forecasting Group were given a double-blind tasking. We weren't told who it was for. We weren't told anything about it. We were just given a target ID. And the subject turned out to be Bob Lazar. What you're going to see here is all the remote viewers presenting all of their raw data unedited while still blind to the target. See if you think Bob Lazar's story is true based on this remote viewing.
So here we are, friends. We are joined with Richard Dolan tonight, and we have a target tasked by Daz looking at some experiences with Bob Lazar. More on that in just a moment. Dennis Nappy II here. We have a full gamut of viewers this evening, and our special guest, Richard Dolan, is joining us, going to provide some commentary and insight onto our RV data and to Daz's feedback here. We're joined with Edward Reardon, Naim, and Dick Allgire, and we have some guest viewers this evening as well. We have Demi and welcome, everybody. This is a robust target. This is a robust amount of data. I'm excited to get into it. Richard, I just want to welcome you to the show as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm just very happy, and everything else that was just shown, that was on the show. People have been able to see that as well. The drawings, those are incredible. I'm already just ready to fall off my chair here.
Yeah, it's exciting watching the team do what it is they do best. So, Daz, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can walk us through what the tasking is and your presentation, and then we'll get into our data here.
Yep, no problems. It'll only take a couple of minutes. It's just a bit of background how I set up the project, and a little bit of feedback for the people out there that don't know much about the project that we're working on this one. So, okay, the project number for this, it was a random number, G7N3L2H8, or if you like just the numeral digits, it was 13069731. And all the remote viewers were blind to this target, and they only had the random numbers above there. No other information was provided to the remote viewers whatsoever, and they didn't even know I was the tasker on this target. We keep that anonymous as well, so they don't have any predispositions on the kind of targets that I like to give. So the project itself was what we called an ARV project. An ARV, or associative remote viewing, usually involves two potential outcomes, and the remote viewer is to only describe one of these potential outcomes, the one that is real or the one that comes true. Why ARV for this target? Because I didn't want to assume that the target itself and its events were real and enforce my personal beliefs on this, because I've followed this target for many years, and I do have a belief system about it. So I made it a ARV target with binary choices, and the A part of this is if it was real, they would describe the real event, and the B part of this is if it was not real, they would describe something else, which I'll go through in a second. So outcome 2, the something else, and this is the tasking behind it. If no actual real events can be sourced, the remote viewer will describe the real Buddha statue in Daz's the Tasker's back garden. And there's my Buddha statue. And as we've discussed, and as people will see in your data, there is no Buddha statue type information in there whatsoever. So it leads me to think that, the events were real. And the fact that you guys describe them in so much beautiful detail, that just adds emphasis to me that, this was real events that Bob was describing.
May I don't want to talk too much here, but
yeah, go for it.
I was wondering about this potential problem that, because everyone has an idea about Bob Lazar, and I wondered if remote viewers would in fact latch onto something that wasn't true, but was kind of true in popular consciousness. I don't know if that happens, but what you're doing here, this outcome 2, I guess that seems like that's your strategy for dealing with that type of possibility. Am I right?
It is in this case, yeah. That was my
Yeah.
thinking behind the target.
That's
You know,
interesting.
to try to divide them in one area. Yeah, if it wasn't true, they would go to the Buddha target. If it is true, they would go to the Bob Lazar thing. But you are right in that we have experiments in the past where we can show this, that it is possible for a remote viewer, and we have to be honest about this to anyone out there. It is possible for remote viewers to pick up and describe things that aren't physical, so they exist in popular culture.
Mhm.
So we do it. Everyone has to be a bit wary about the information from remote viewers and use it with other sources of information to confirm it. So because we can go anywhere in time and space, there are no limitations.
Yeah, thanks.
So so this was the target outcome 2. If the events didn't happen, I was hoping that there would be nothing for the remote viewers to review, so they would go to the Buddha target and describe that. The actual outcome itself, the main outcome that I wanted to be remote viewed was, and it's got 3 parts to it: the what, which was Robert or Bob Lazar; the where, which was area S4 near area 51 in Nevada, USA; and the time scale I put on this was when he was working there for a short period of time, which was between December 1998 and end of February 1989.
I think you meant 88, but anyway.
Sorry, yes. The viewer, and this is my target queue. So I always write my intent down, because we measure the accuracy against what my intent is, and it just solidifies it as well. So I wrote here: the viewer will ignore any myth, story, social construct, or non-factual events, and will only describe the real, actual events if they occurred. If no actual real events can be sourced, the remote viewer will describe the Buddha statue in my feedback. Yeah. Now, the feedback itself, Robert Bob Lazar is an American businessman who claims he was hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology. This work supposedly occurred at a secret site called S4, a subsidiary installation allegedly located several kilometers south of Area 51. Lazar purports to have examined an alien craft and read US government briefing documents that described alien involvement in human affairs over the past 10,000 years. His claims brought additional public attention to Area 51. And here's some Area 51 there, and alleged S4 is down here somewhere. Bob also stated that doors had been camouflaged into the side of a mountain on the dried out Papoose Lake, and the same location where these images were captured in 2018. I don't know how real these are, and if they are actually the S4 ones. Here's some artist renderings of what Bob Lazar kind of described, and here's the real photographs that someone claims to have took there. And back in the 1980s, Bob Lazar made astonishing claims about the US military in a live interview with CBS Class TV, in which he appeared as a shadowy figure named Dennis. And he initially had his identity hidden first. In Lars' original 1989 interview, he said, "There's really no way I can prove it without revealing my identity and getting myself into more trouble than I already have." And over the years, that came true pretty much. When asked exactly what's going on up there, Lazar replied, "Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers or flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin, and they're basically being dismantled. Some are in various stages of completion, built from other parts, and they're being test flown and basically just analyzed." This here's a poster from a documentary that Jeremy Corbell did in 2018. So that's good research as well if people want to know more on this topic. Here's some additional feedback here. So here's sketches from Bob Lazar himself of the sport model UFO that he claims he worked on. This is the reactor system here. And these are the gravity amplifiers, which are these little free things underneath here. The other things on this page here is a badge. I'm not sure. Richard might know on this. Is this a real badge, Richard, or is it a mock-up of one? The majestic badge.
I never thought it was a mock-up. I always had assumed that he claimed it was that was a legitimate badge. But
Okay, yeah.
I don't
So,
think
yeah,
I-
so this is other evidence here. So a badge there that I think this is a wage slip here showing, and again, it's got the got the
yeah,
MG
that's
mark on
definitely
there.
legit.
Yeah.
the slip.
And this is just a reference here for a reference that, Bob Lazar's name was actually in the Los Alamos phone directory there. So these are just small pieces of evidence to, to kind of buck up his story a little bit. This here is just some sketches from Bob himself of the craft here, an original sketch here, and then there's a 3D model there of the what we call the sport model craft that he alleges that he works on. And just some more feedback from pretty much right on the spot now this month is we just had, the congressional hearings from the UFO whistleblower, and he detailed in these congressional hearings that, that there are reverse engineering programs going on, that they have craft, and that they have non-human bodies there as well. And just another fun thing that came up at the same time as this on Twitter, or UFO Twitter, was, just this quote from Bob Lazar saying, "I told you so," which I thought was pretty relevant at this time. I think these guys doing this target at this time in history is the perfect time for this. So that's pretty much it for the feedback on, the construction of this target.
Awesome feedback, Daz, and an awesome project. A lot of great drawings in there too, and great just historical photos on there that I think are very relevant.
Yeah, anyone out there that doesn't know much about this story, you can go on YouTube or TikTok or Twitter, and there are literally hundreds of video clips showing Bob Lazar, in his video testimony over the years on this. So there's plenty of information out there for people that want more on this.
Richard, any comments on Daz's presentation before we start reviewing our data?
No, everything seemed really straightforward and accurate. No, so far so good. I'm still reeling from the original drawings that you guys just showed, which I don't know how you were able to latch on.
There's more than that.
There's a lot more.
Yeah.
So no, I'm just think it seemed very accurate to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
and being the tasker on this, as and I want to be honest with this, I do have a predisposition on this. I do have like Richard, I do have a belief that I don't see any flaw. I mean, there are flaws, but I don't see that Bob Lazar is telling lies in this. He just too much feels real, and like Richard as well, it's the fact that no one can explain to me that he knew exactly where the craft were being testing, and he took people out there and they videoed it way before anyone knew, on the public circuit that Area 51 existed and all that kind of stuff. That's the thing that people can't explain to me. That's the thing that makes me believe that his story is legitimate.
Okay, well, let's get into our data, and let's start with Edward and see what he brought back for us. Edward.
All righty. Great presentation. Let me get this thing. Oh, look at it. It worked first time. All right. Oh, damn it. Hang on a second.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. So the first thing was I'm in this remote area with these rocky cliffs all over the place. And it was a solid area, very rocky, very remote target. And so, okay, that's fine. What's interesting here? And I saw, this looks like that tasking photo you had there of that inlet on this side of the mountain. But I saw this thing here, and that seemed to be what was interesting to me. Again, I'm on this remote location. There's something interesting built here. The area was quiet, kind of reminded me like an old abandoned mine area or something like that. But there was life there. There was something going on. This was interesting to me, and I didn't, I'm not a big remote viewing UFO person, so I'm gonna let you know now. I'm not. But I saw this big tall dude, and I was like, oh, man, is that a freaking alien, man? Like a tall alien? I didn't even want to go there, dude. All right, but this dude was tall. And I was like, oh, that's weird, man. But okay, there's some activity going on in the place. And there was some packing going. There was all kinds of stuff going on. and it felt very military to me. And there were like, you know, military type of people giving orders, move out, do this, do that. And there was an operation going on there. And I felt like there was like an oversight committee that was really ordering people around, you know. And so, yeah, it felt like a military setup here. And I wanted to know where this whole kind of move, you know, where were they going? And they were moving to this military base here. And it felt very organized to me and very operational. But they were going to this base. And this is kind of more of what they were doing, you know, this whole military thing, move, 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 and they're doing all this kind of stuff, bossing everybody. Everybody is very operational, very organized, very under command is really what it was. So I want to know what's going on. What's the situation here? And something it even felt like there was some kind of a threat there that they were kind of there to maintain. And it felt military, but it also felt scientific as well. Like they were doing something operational in the area. And there was something very designated to that specific area, that specific territory. It was both military and scientific at the same time. And so I was like, well, what is that all about? So then I saw these guys here. They're researching type people, and they're doing something. They're looking and they're studying something, and they're trying to decipher it and its meaning. So I had to wonder, is this an operation that they're in to discover, quote unquote, something? And there are things to discover here, I felt. They were very rich, and the area felt old, and it was very historical, but they were into this thing. They were really trying to figure it out. And it did feel old to me. I don't know what their thing with these UFOs, if they're new or old, but it did feel old to me. And that something had landed there or ended up there, and now the place is interesting. But what was really interesting about it, like there were layers at this location, like meaning like one on top of each other, you know, kind of like if you were to build civilizations over and over again, there'd be layers of that in the area.
I'm just thinking of his Joe Rogan interview, and he said he thought that some of these things were found in archaeological digs. I think that's probably what you're getting, Edward.
That's how I was feeling, you know.
Yeah.
But something landed there, you know. I don't know. And it was a good spot for it. It seemed like it was the location was, this is the good spot to do this. So there was this researcher type person there, and he was part of the team, studying the landscapes and doing all these kinds of things. It was kind of seemed like a kind of a topography kind of guy to me. And there was also a woman there, and there was a partner, and they were doing these kinds of things together. And there was something there that needed to be moved or relocated. And something about the place didn't feel unsafe to me. And they were going to move it to a new area, a new designated area. And so they were kind of in motion of moving this thing. And there was this, you know, transport craft in the sky. You know, that's all I'll say. There was a transport craft hovering in the sky, you know, and it was just hanging out, and it was right by this thing, and and it was moving. It was moving stuff. It was moving and moving stuff. And this person, they had some level of access to this machinery, and it was energetic machinery, and it felt very exotic in nature, like space bending or time altering technology. Or at least the rumor to have such. It's most likely written in a book. These individuals seem to be revolving around this like they are stuck, but I didn't know what that meant. And it was like they seemed to be repeating the same pattern again and again. And it felt like they were experiencing that because of this strange exotic technology that they were trying to decipher. And that is what happened.
Great work, Edward. Great session. I see as you're going through it, a lot of heads nodding. I'm guessing there's lots of corroborating data among the viewers in here too, which is always fun.
I want to reiterate, I'm a big skeptic of the topic in general. And so when I go into a remote viewing session, I'm not automatically wanting to draw aliens and UFOs. And so that's the last place that I go when I'm in a session. So this was a very interesting session. And if you were to ask me now, after remote viewing it, how I feel about Bob Lazar's story, I will refer to my session that something is real there. So, again, that's coming from a skeptic of the whole topic. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Edward. Okay, Naim, let's take a look at what you have for us. You're muted, Naim.
That was some good work there. I actually drew something similar to you there, Edward, as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like what's called my S3, which is like kind of like all my low-level data compiled on one page, just to give an overview of what I had. So I had like land with hills. I did have a disk thing in the air, energy moving up, life, structure, and I had a water element as well, which seems like it's a reoccurring thing in people's sessions here. And like Edward, you know, I cut my teeth in remote viewing doing kind of like just straight edge targets. So when I see something, kind of like the last thing my mind goes to is UFO stuff. So my initial impressions here was people trying to build or reconstruct something, assembling or reconfiguring something. And you know, in the beginning, I was thinking, is it an astronomical thing? You know, kind of my initial contact. Looking at the land, I see a structure that was, you know, built into the side of a hill. And the first thing that came to mind was like something you'd see in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. You know what I mean? That's kind of where my mind went to. I get a do not enter feeling here. Chalky, dusty, long path, vertical elements. A large prominent feature, kind of like vaulted doors there, very chamber-like. Again, my mind was still kind of going to like this, like, is this a megalithic structure? You know, very large doors. Oh, that's yeah. And then this was one of my, this is one of my more clear moments in my session. You know, I see a person exploratory, looking for some kind of proof. He's a researcher on a scientific endeavor. He's baffled, doesn't understand. It's the question of the century. I get the sense that people would say like, this is impossible, you know, things like that about it. And I got the sense that it's like maybe something they dug up or something they found, is what, you know, he's baffled about. And I even, in my whiteboard session, I kept saying it's like, maybe it's archaeology or something. I just kept getting the sense that something was uncovered. Again, I see this person in an area, astonished, can't believe it, dumbfounded, something about building techniques and architecture of something, making observations, measurements. I get the sense of they retrieve something. And yeah, there I get the explorer archaeology type feel, recovering something. I saw people, you know, multiple people in a dusty area trying to complete a project, and my sense was like a reconstruction. They're following some kind of blueprint, shifting things around, workload, teamwork, hoisting, lifting, moving things. This was, yeah, a screenshot from my whiteboard session. Yeah, they're astonished as they kind of hoist something out. Something's uncovered. I get the sense like of the veil was lifted on that. This was kind of clear to me as well. I saw like a laser, laser-like cutting happening. So something solid being cut with precise craftsmanship. Like I wrote laser-like. And so like out of the darkness, I see these sparks associated with a structure being cut open. Threw this one in here because it looks like what Edward drew as well. Something to do with the water. I don't know. Maybe this is an element of something they found, but a squarish type structure with these kind of holes punctured in them. And I get the sense of water somehow being evaporated or drained through here. So I don't know. Maybe people who are more knowledgeable in the in the craft and things that it was using could chime in on that. And then here we get into some more, I guess, more speculative things. I'm not sure. Maybe Richard, you would know. Did Bob Lazar ever claim to actually come in contact with any bodies or anything like that?
No, he had said that he thought he might have seen a being, a non-human being at a distance out of the corner of his eye or walking by. As far as I recall, that's as far as he ever claimed.
Okay, because I see a body, and then I saw this pretty clear. This looked like a remains, somewhat preserved remains of something. I don't know if I could call that human, but something laid to rest there, and I get the sense of do not enter with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I saw a person using some kind of tools, maybe doing an incision or something on a body. And I said, this reminds me of like exhuming human remains or something like that. Scientific discovery, incision, it's being documented. And then I got the sense of they are not going to believe this. That was my sense on there. So that's my session data there.
Wow. Really cool about that body too. I'd love to see if we can somehow get confirmation on that, Naim. But nice work on that one.
I mean,
all right.
Even though Bob Lazar never claimed to have seen a dead alien body, is it possible that you could have viewed it anyway, even though he didn't see it?
Oh yeah, it could be something happening in that area, right?
Yeah, right.
In the similar location, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, very cool. Okay, Dick, let's see what you have for us.
Okay, it's a pretty long one. I'll get through it quickly. Here we start with my low level, just 1 second bits of data. Right off the bat, I see that. Low level for Richard, we're getting real low level data. Just basic gestalts here, and then I'm probing low level data. And my S3 is a disk that's metallic, quite big. It's in the air. The air is like ionized, like there's a plasma around it. It affects the air. There's some type of tracking, like satellite or some tracking device following it. There's a mechanical arm lifting something. Here's the craft again, my best visuals. Like, holy crap, man, I'm looking up at the bottom of this thing. And the air is distorted slightly around it like a heat wave, but it's not hot. There's like some energy field. Has sensors, a communications pod. I said the communication is more advanced than the propulsion. Now I'm in a structure, a large building. There's like a loading dock or a garage door. I guess that's what you showed in the feedback, Daz. Vehicle enters, and there's guards as security outside. This is done with a plan, with operational security. The arrival is planned, it's timed, rehearsed. There are men on radios with communications. There's an overwatch. This is a secure thing. It's delivered to a meeting. Something is unloaded for safekeeping. I'm getting examination stuff. something is scanned, like a CAT scan or MRI or something. There's readings on a screen with numbers and values, busy stuff, technology, machines. People attend this. Now, this guy's a linguist. He's trying to decipher written symbols like a language or pictograms. He's an expert, very smart. This is challenging. He has to take it apart and assemble it. He's a PhD. Part of it is missing. There's a disagreement. Two people are arguing. One guy's saying, this is just going to make history. That's kind of backing up what Naim said. Excuse me, I have a cold. I'm losing my voice. A little gravelly here. This guy is saying, this is like Nobel Prize shit. We got to push this forward. And he's very ego, megalomaniac, high opinion of himself. The other guy's pleading caution, like, we got to keep this under wraps. How dare you? So there's a face-off over this. Back inside, a secure place where something's lifted off. There's a screen. This is not public. They're very professional feel. It's a wrapped tarp. Looks like what Naim had. They have to sign for it. It's stamped like a retrieval. Men are guarding it. Disassembled. Each step is documented. There's a checklist. At some point, there's a bad odor, and I got people getting sick, covering their noses. They're wearing masks. There are people gagging. Here's the bundle. It's an artifact. There's old style floodlights under fluorescent tube lights. It's cradled in a webbing. It's secured and lifted. It's not intact. It's lighter than you would expect. I hear mechanical sounds, engine whining, people speaking commands like lift easy, swing it steady. Here's the place again. Supervisor knows what's going on, but some of the people that guards don't. Oh, these guys are military perimeter. They secure this whole place. They're told not to look, not to talk. These guys are frightened. This is not a good detail to be on. They could get in trouble. They're curious but nervous. They need a pass. This feels past, not current, not future. So I didn't get a sense that this, sometimes, Richard, we're given future events, and I realized this was near past. Old army truck with a crane, gears wrenching sounds, diesel engine, it chugs and goes gobble, 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 you know, blah, 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 diesel fumes. And they don't know how to judge the weight. They're doing calculations. They have a load master. Here they are lifting this thing. This guy somebody was put in a cell. He was warned not to talk about it, and he did. And they actually sent him to a base in the Arctic or Greenland, like Pidifuk or Didifuk. I'll have to look that up and see if there's a base with a name like that.
Nickname.
Yeah. Okay, so inside this structure, there's harsh fluorescent lightings, there's drapes, there's something's hidden. There's concern over who's admitted, like who's allowed which access, what duty do you perform, what clearance, and somebody saying this is a fucking security nightmare. Those with skills don't have the clearance. They have to be kept isolated of some knowledge or evidence. It's compartmentalized. This military guy is mad, man. He's like no control over who's going where. There's commingling of some people who have a job but no clearance. Some people see what they shouldn't see. They're talking with people they're not supposed to talk to. Who's designated to go to which area? This got out of hand. It should have been controlled. And maybe this was picking up on why, when he talked about this.
He said there was issues. He said everything was so compartmentalized, right? And they weren't able to have the conversations like a normal scientific working group talking, right? Because it was so tightly regulated.
Yeah, that's what I was picking up here. Okay, here they are. They're looking at this thing. They're not sure how to proceed. They have to wait for a proper team to come take charge. They're sort of stupefied. They're worried about hazardous material. There's a chain of command and jurisdictional area issues that they're worried about. And now they're looking at this object. They're really interested in the heavy part. They want to remove it and take it for examination, but they're having problems. It seems like they can only be near it for a brief time. They wonder if it has something like, the best way I could come up with to describe it is an anti-theft device, like something activates to prevent them from moving it. And it's like, I would describe it as an anti-theft AI built in. The problems they're having is like, is this still activated or energized? They don't know how to turn it off. It's quite heavy. It makes them sick to be around it or disoriented. They really want this, but they're really nervous about it. And then I did some whiteboard, and we got a whiteboard session where I'm talking about that. But yeah, I got somebody examining stuff that was exotic and propulsion communication. They didn't know. They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, it sounds
And
like
I saw the
a lot of
disc. So
yeah, a lot of the talking points that are out there publicly, Dick, I think you picked up on. Really nice job on that.
So
Okay.
yeah, the story, you know, Richard, we're trained to just get data and without a story. And my story would have been like, they retrieve something and makes them sick, and they don't know what to do with it, and they're real concerned about who sees it and who gets access to it. So
I'll just add the whole thing about becoming sick when they're close to this for a long period of time or feeling nausea. I remember that with Bob Lazar's story, but I definitely know that was written about in a controversial book, admittedly, but an interesting one by a writer named Lou Baldwin called In League with a UFO. And he, I don't know, some listeners might know this, but he wrote about this explicitly, saying, you know, you only could go into the craft for half an hour at a time. If you went in for longer than that, you could become ill. Not everyone believes his story, but I will just say I read his book. I thought, wow, it's quite fascinating. I did speak to him once. I know years ago, Linda Moulton Howe just drilled him for information for everything he was worth. And but that was what he had said, that this whole thing about nausea, there were other things he stated about the craft as well, but I was very, I mean, it's just fascinating the way you guys are picking. You guys are all next level remote viewers. I'm just amazed.
yeah, I haven't read that book. I got more. Yeah, I got a sense of like, oh man, nausea. So
Yeah, really cool.
Interesting.
Okay. All right, let's move on to session.
Yeah. Let me know when you got it.
We can see it.
Okay.
Can you just zoom in a little bit on it? Everybody see that okay?
Let me see here.
That's good.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. Started with Cascade. Well, I went through the entire, I had so many pages of data. I've got some highlights here. So I picked up on two significant structures, one energy, life, human, high. And as far as structure, quiet, listening deep in thought, how long until we're there, humbled, how many times, and it was a traveler. Next, this was one of my initial pieces, and you saw a more evolved piece, but as I was warming up and getting into it, definitely the exterior of a vessel, bright flashing pulse, not part of propulsion, but has a different function. I heard a whoosh sound, and I heard an audible human saying echo 1. Vehicle capable of flight, includes space, underwater, and then I had this overwhelming sense through matter. And in my video session, I did a video session similar to what Dick alluded to. I had perceived this vessel being able to go from like the bottom of the Mariana Trench through the ocean, through our atmosphere, out into space to the moon and back with like no time at all. There was the energy portion was vortex or wormhole like, and allowing movement faster than light. And so I think my sense of it was that time becomes irrelevant. Time is not significant. Here's another one. we're approaching event horizon, spiral tunnel. It was moving to the left. I could clearly see it moving in a specific direction. Gateway, traveling great distance. This was really interesting to me because it's an element, a molecule of great significance, and it's scalable. And the easiest way to, like, one of those, it's like a kid's toy and it's got the electricity sparkling in it, and you put your fingers on the globe and the electricity goes from the ball out to your fingertips. That's what this looked like. And this is another, a different perception of that. So light emitting from the energy, and that's the source. So when I went into Life Human High, they're talking about it's a test. How far now? It's fast. Everybody's working with intent. Very clever individuals. Somebody working on, it looks like, some kind of a dashboard, perfectly controlled, simple, but a long journey. Comfortably working efficiently, control panel, very bright vessel, very dark outside of vessel. And then there was a different individual observing progress. And for whatever this person was observing, those were strange, uncommon shapes. This is probably the most interesting thing to me, but this person was aware of me, says to me, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And I ask, "What are you operating?" And this person says, "You wouldn't understand, it's too advanced." Says to me, "You realize what you're doing is dangerous." And then he puts me out of his mind, and I couldn't make a connection back with this person. This is interesting, especially after the big reveal, Daz. So I'm still moving in a vessel, not on foot, but it's a cave-like underground area with more than one tunnel. There were 2 tunnels. So assuming, that I was on target with the other data, if you were moving in a vessel, you could decide where you wanted to go in this underground environment. So this is my diarization. Target includes individuals wearing uniforms with insignia. There are at least 3 individuals. My presumption is on board the vessel. One seems to be observing, one operating a control panel, another performing mechanical functions. Seems like they're piloting an advanced vessel. Seems like space, but I was aware of an underground aspect to the target. At one point, one of them engaged with me directly, communicating in a calm, intelligent manner, unfazed. This individual redirected attention to his work. I was unable to get his attention again, nor would he share what he was working on. This is part of the structure that I saw when I was viewing the underground portion with the 2 different cave-like areas. So it seemed like stationary, possibly a different vehicle, but I didn't really think this was too significant. But this is back to the 3 occupants, and I asked, do they speak English? Yes. The vessel is one of many. They have autonomy to work independently as they see fit, running a wide variety of tests, not to see if it works, but to push it to the limits of the technology. It's stable, reliable, and far more than what was expected. They're working at night primarily. It moves extremely fast. It's near land. Picture that first visual that I showed you with the over the land, and it seemed like a beam coming down. I can see trees, vegetation, something on the water. They need fresh water and can pull it up easily before continuing on, almost like they're testing the vessel to see how fast they can take it from one solar system to another, maybe farther, without adding time to the journey. Again, there's something about this removes time from the equation. This this didn't really intrigue me too much until, Daz, you showed us the pictures from Bob Lazar, and it actually, the shape is very similar. So what I see here is an element right in the middle, and you can see, so onboard power supply seems more than propulsion, opens wormhole, limitless. You can see whatever it is in the containment field, but it's very, very bright. Element on the periodic table, 115 came to mind. This is not 0-point energy. It's a simple deviation from physics, safe and clean. And you can see that I wrote, it turns, the lower portion turns in the opposite direction of the upper portion, which creates like a vortex. And there's another component of harmonics. And so whatever this operates, it's not just purely mechanical. And this is I was basically diving deeper into this. 115 Moscovium. This is a starting point, already unlocking heavier elements with exotic properties. Feels like this energy source or configuration powers the vessel, creates a force field around it, but it uses vibration or sound, acoustics as well, but not something you can hear. And the pulsing within the containment is safe. Uses a beam to project a point in front of the vessel, which can open a wormhole or portal. Addresses or points in space and time, time becomes irrelevant. The operators are thinking this may be the way we travel to other galaxy or galaxies they're still testing. It shows dependable, promising results. The significance of the element is that it's created and not naturally occurring. Feels like 115 Moscovium. And then this is a picture of basically what you saw before: directed energy, bright white yellow beam. It seemed like a tractor beam because it seems to be pulling water up, causes material to slip upward. So not necessarily pulling, but it slips upward. And then these pulsing lights, again, there's the moon was out, it was a clear night, hovering silently, and that's what I've got.
You really can't get closer to calling target than element 115.
Unbelievable. I mean, I just got to say that whole thing about time being irrelevant. One of the, Lazar stated that before he even saw any discs, he had 2 days where he was doing briefings. And he said there were 2 programs that he learned about. I think one was Project Galileo, that was about propulsion. And the other one was called Looking Glass. And that was the physics of time travel, I believe. And
yeah, interesting. I spoke with Corso Jr. years ago, and he said something very similar. And he says the stuff I can't get into is the time travel stuff. That's what's going to get me into trouble when we talk about time. Wow, great session. Really good work there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Demi, let's take a look at your data.
Okay, thank you. Amazing data to any one of you. Yes, so let's see. Okay. Just tell me if you can see it.
Yep, you can see it.
Okay. Sorry. Now, this is just a second. Again. This is not a good one, so sorry for that. Of course, it's happening at my time, and of course, I'm gonna stop sharing and go again. I was ready, but let's.
Hey, no worries. Take your time. We can make it at it. Relax.
Yeah.
It's all good. No, don't worry.
I know it's yeah.
Here,
okay.
we'll do this, Demi.
So from the get-go, I've got life. I've got life, structure, energy, and man-made. And from the get-go, I've got traveling back time, and I felt the need to write down. And then I've got low-level data: sandy, dusty, gritty, great, glittering. So I probably took something from the space there, reforming space, reforming shapes. And I've gotten scenery like Star Wars scenery from the movies, of course, and sandy dunes. And then again, when trying to do my ideogram again, I went to more deep in the place. So triangular, pointy, horizontal, cloudy, misty. These are still low data. So at that point, I was jumping more abruptly into the data, and I felt it was windy, blowing away, and something was lifting up vertical with something bumpy, with multiple round polished things, with rumbling, humming, buzzing type of noises. I've got a taste of artificial chemical created, and AOL as cold fusion at some point, and also on AOL it was dry ice. I don't know exactly what is dry ice. I know from what is coming from, but I didn't know at that point. And again, the heavy lifting motion. I was amazed, and then I've got this type of visuals, like a vehicle above the land with hovering energetics unders, and like a misty, like a booming type of effect that usually aerial vehicle have if they have hypersound speed. So the place was sandy, barren, gritty, warm. I've got energetic that felt misty, round. It was perpendicular. I have an orange blue, I think it was a dawn or something in the air, an energetic under. And then I felt the need to move to the optimum position to perceive the target. I've got this because I'm very, very attracted to energetics usually. So I feel this pulsating energetics, which felt distorted and happened at once. And then I've seen this swirling vortex type of energetics, which was happening like a re-entering type of energetics, which felt it was in the air. And this was tearing the fabric of reality. That was my feeling. And it was like a jagged line in the air, which was distorted, like distorting the space-time. And I've got an OL of an observer effect, like anybody who was there was somehow adding to the effect that was happening there. This type of places was at the ground level, probably the tunnels there, I don't know. Reminding me of a cage. And again, my rippled effects, which distorted the time-space zone and the fabric of the environment, was very, very powerful at this point in my mind. It felt like a type of rotating thing above, which was splitting reality in two parts. And again, the distortion. And then I needed to go to the whiteboard because I felt like I was needing much more information. And I went on this, suddenly I got this image, which was very, very, very powerful in my mind. This thing was metallic, but also fuzzy, like immaterial. I couldn't touch, but I couldn't touch at the same time. These things were pulsating and luminous above, a lot of energy above and around, luminous flashing. And I've got an OL as a UFO, so I felt the need to write down this one. And then I move further, and I've got the same object, which was above of massive water, and felt that like it was vacuuming the water from the big massive water, and also throwing some energy, which was very exotic and weird at some point. And I felt the purpose of this was like prospecting, collecting, and as exotic energetics. When I moved to the exotic energy to see what's there, I have got an AOL. AOL are analytic overlays, exotic energy like warp type of energy. I felt a funneling, tunnel-like, convoluted, blasting, like it felt like a shortcut to travel from a point to A to a point B for a shortcut, like a warp type of, I don't know, device, like a wormhole type of tunneling. and I've got a stellar material. So I got a material that was not coming from this Earth. And these knots were the points in time that it was traveling from. And again, that's vortex energy, coil shape like, which was like the finite universe graphic, but showing the wormhole that we were traveling from point A to point B, like a shortcut. So it was physics, which was change. There are massive energy not belonging to the environment that was in at that moment, which transcends space-time, is almost immaterial or unlike material. There are gateways or portals, which are the connection through which these exotic energetics are brought into this environment, like from another dimension. I was asking me from. It felt like a back-forth kind of a balance between past, present, present, past. Sorry. And then I moved to, because I find that time travel was usually not found in my session, so I went to there to see what's more on this, and I felt it was like Mandela effect, and this is my representation of a life, and it's kind of symbolic because this is the imagery, if you recall, from a movie from Truman Show. I don't know if you recall almost the final stage when he realized that is not what it is. His life was entirely different from what he thought it is. And so it was an observer effect, the vibration, the frequency. So somebody was looking up from up to him down on that ladder. So the props, I use this word because I didn't know what to say. The props used are not belonging to the set, not to the outer reality. The props means nothing on the outer reality, bigger, better, richer. The only thing that can transit space-time is consciousness. This is like type of conceptual thing that I was having during this set target. And then again, why traveling through time space? Because of fixing, adding, prospecting, and extracting things, solutions for problems. And I think this is the big part and the most important part of my session. Thank you.
Demi, that was excellent. Really cool connection to consciousness that you pulled in there as well. That was neat to hear.
You wrote space time is consciousness at one point in there.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Wow.
Okay, I'll go through my stuff real quick, and then we can have a post discussion here about it. But great job, everybody, on this. Okay, all right. Here's my first session. I did 3 sessions. I'll go through them pretty quickly, but early on my first session, I had this sphere shape with an object above it. And it was moving, and I had the sense that it was surveying or collecting or gathering something. And there was a life that had observed it as well. I had life observed, looking at that object. And then I got into some energetics and dimensional aspects here. It was this extra dimension beneath the plane of sight. It was just trying to deal with beyond 3-dimensional space. I felt there was something else going on that felt significant, some kind of fissure or crack. And then I was starting to get some more detail here on some type of craft here. There was an obstructive view, but it was floating above a surface. It was rounded and curved, but had some hexagonal features to it as well. Just describing it with brown lines from the structure that it was obscuring my view. So as if it was on the ground trying to look up, but I kept seeing these brown lines in front of the object there. And then the word choice came to me, and it was about refurbishing, reusing, or recycling, or to make great again, something that was out of commission and retired. But what's important about it? Again, the choice to render and to ready, the purpose and function of it. I got a lot of data throughout my sessions on looking at the function and the purpose, to serve a purpose and be meaningful. And then just talking about curiosity, how it killed the cat here. but it was an exploration or an adventure on findings and discovery. But then looking at these choices again, what will you do? What will you do once you find it? The discovery was an interesting notion, but it was more like a recovery, something that was lost but has now been found. But was it ever really lost? As long as one knows of its existence in this realm, it's never lost, just not found. And something dealing with that was buried or a burial. And looking at what might be interesting about that aspect, I had this sketch here. Something was fluid or flowing in motion. It was spiraling or a corkscrew in motion downwards. There was a hard surface and contact and friction sounds. The energetics felt white, and there was electromagnetic movement, the descent like an egg drop. It felt transdimensional, but also transcranial of the mind and of the body. And then here, the main purpose was dealing with travel and movement and transport of thoughts and ideas and movements of the mind, looking at some brain technology here. Leading to the future and beyond. It's just kind of ambiguous data here. I had another sketch here, just a partially exposed cylindrical object. This did look a little bit like one of the sketches Daz shared in the very beginning. It was the sketches that Bob Lazar had made. Of course, his was much neater and more detailed than mine, but this felt mechanical. Looking at rods and gears that were moving. They were very technical and energized, part of the function and the operation of whatever this was here, this aspect of it. Again, dealing with movement and energetics and transpose, a movement or shift, a change, a transformation. Okay, looking through an opening here, movement through an opening that I labeled as a gateway. Okay, and then just looking at choices here and really talking about our awareness here. Can we make a choice if we're not self-aware? If we don't know ourselves, who are we? How can we decide for anything except to exist, to function and be used? Dismissive. Okay, let me go into my next session here. And now my computer's... And I think I froze. Can you guys hear me still?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep, we can hear and see you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my computer froze up at 10, just my luck, right? The last one to go. So I'm going to jump off for a minute and I'll pop right back in. I'm sorry.
There are a lot of overlaps in sessions, which is amazing.
So much correlation between viewers because it's, Mr. Dolan, it's intriguing when we as individual remote viewers get to the signal line and we trust the data that we're receiving after working hundreds of targets. And it's an entirely different conversation when you have a statistically significant group of well-trained remote viewers coming together with such a strong correlation.
I could not agree more. I'm just amazed at how consistent your collective data happens to be. I mean, how many of you had wormholes or energetics, and everyone seems to be describing some kind of exotic technology that just wouldn't come out of the blue, I wouldn't think. I mean, from all of the targets that you have, and every one of you have zoned in on aspects of what this appears to be. It's incredible.
There is something.
I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. There is something to be said for the human brain is attracted to what it is, and so that it kind of explains why we all see things from a different viewpoint. However, it's very clear to me that we're all looking at the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
The references to time travel that many of you have had, I've always been terrified of even considering time travel, but lately I've just been wondering, could this be possible? And I'm hearing so many of you just delving into it. And then I'm reminded, Lazar, one of the briefings that he read dealt with the physics of time travel, according to what he said. That was Project Looking Glass. So I'm starting to wonder, is this what we're actually dealing with after all? Among many other things.
Yeah. What I'm finding interesting in the RV sessions, and it's not something we know from. I don't think I've ever heard Lazar talk about this. Is the correlation at the water element as well with this craft?
Yeah.
I'm finding
I
that
don't
very. I
recall
mean,
Lazar talking about water, but of course there are so many examples of witnesses seeing water being sucked up. Daz, you and I were talking about a month or so ago about Ingo Swan.
yeah, that's
And
what
of
it
course,
reminds me of. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and his great story about that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if because we are hearing that they aren't they are trying to reverse engineer these craft, but they're not getting anywhere. I'm wondering if maybe one of the missing things is the water element that they're not integrating in some way.
Yeah,
It's very
interesting.
interesting because it's just it's such a little detail that seems to come across in all the RV sessions here that is a bit out of place. It's like, well, where's that element come from? Because that's not part of the picture that we know.
Yeah, it was in the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, the water's not in Lazar's story, but it's in the story of many UFOs, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the recent ones. I don't know if you covered that while I jumped off, but the recent ones, that's exactly what they were saying. That's public now on the record, with the Tic Tac and everything.
Well, if there's 9 different types, possibly integrated into some and not the others,
Well, and to revisit, Daz, the actual queue for the target is a window of a couple of months.
Yeah.
So while most of us are maybe focusing, well, we're definitely picking up elements of an underground area, of a vessel. Several of us are picking up elements of what at this point, I would venture to speculate that maybe a test drive where they were out doing something anyways.
Interesting.
Yeah. And as we know from the story, Lazar did say, there were all these like hangar areas, and he does. I think I heard him describe a couple of the other craft, like a top hat shaped one, and a few others there as well. So
they were not all the shape of the sports model.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Different types out there. I just have a few more pages I can go through here with my data, and then we can wrap up and jump into it. So again, I was looking at things that were something that was dimensional, that was spinning like a vortex or vortices, multiple, extra dimensional in time and space, an order, a sacred order that was institutional. There was I have wormhole here as an AOL. Behold, and then it's in the eye of the observer. I know Demi was talking about the observer as well. Fluctuations, juxtaposition, superposition, being in more than one location at the same time, or at least that's how it appears or seems to be. There was a life there. There was surprise and wonder, shock and awe. They were observant, stoic, and moving to towards the object. The object was in space-time. It's forever present. Talking a little bit more about that, forever present in the minds of men, but this object transcends time, may seemingly exist longitudinally or long-term, but from its vantage, its movements are only seconds have passed by, moments or only seconds have passed by. The object, and this just felt like an object that it was just going through time, and its perception of time was a lot shorter than if we were to watch how long it would take to do whatever it was doing. And again, it was just moving and spinning. That was recurring or reoccurring, like insights into hypnotic or hypnagogic trance. But why does it spin? It moves like an optical illusion. It gets wavy. It seems to float closer, yet move away at the same time. It was transdimensional. And again, the purpose and function was having to do with movement through time, to observe, report, restrict, and then back to functionality as a means of observation. And they wanted to report what was learned to navigate this complex system. And then looking again, what's being hidden here, something transverse. And we had this circular shape with energy ascending out of it, interacting. The result of the object in space above, it pulls these lines of energy and transmits it, some kind of beacon with frequencies and dimensions and fluctuations in time. Then here again, looking at it, just a large circular object, something from above looking downward, and we had a cavern or an opening that was connected with it, a three-dimensional sphere that was rotating. It was something hazardous or dangerous, a danger zone. It was like an obstacle, it was electrifying and charging. And then looking at the observer, it was a man with wisdom and kindness, one who believes that he's observing something significant or miraculous even, but unaware that it's he who's being observed, that is the intended purpose, to observe him and see how he reacts, a test of functionality. What are his thoughts, his actions? How does one respond to stimulus, internal and external, focus, hone focus and skill? And I had an AOL, the dancing sun of Medjugorje. And then here, looking at the shape here, dimensional, functional, observable. And then something like voice to skull technology here. Something that was receivable or transpondent. And then again, just looking at receiving this information or this transmission, talking about something sent. The intent is that it is to be received, and if something is received, then it must have been sent. Okay, and then one more quick session here, and I'll wrap it up.
Again, more time travel stuff from Dennis on this one as well.
Yeah. My low level stuff here. I have this this opening here. I'm wondering if this is that doorway here. I have an opening or entry or doorway. It was hard and rough and abrasive, but parts of it felt callous and smoothed, structured or compounded. There was energetics behind it. And it was echoey inside. I had a male, thin. He was tall, hard and bony, 40s to 50s, balding. Some confusing aspects to it, but he was healthy, curious, experienced. There was electric smells. There was something about shape shifting. And then looking at this shape again, it was telescopic and cylindrical. It had soft, squishy aspects to it, but it was energetics moving downwards. There were some pungent smells affiliated with it, but also upward energetics, resistance, bouncy and fluid movements here. And then looking at the location, wet, dirty, grungy, just describing what could be, the area down there, gritty, isolated. I had an AOL of Skinwalker Ranch here. And then this was neat. And I did a whiteboard session on this piece here, this shape here, almost like a hamburger. It was a metallic structure here. And it seemed to open vertically up and down. And what was neat in my whiteboard, it felt somewhat warm to the touch, but I had this concept of no entropy. All energy was it was so efficient that it wasn't wasting any energy in the operation of what it was trying to do and how it was moving. Looking at this again, we have this sketch here of this object, and what this was doing, this was sweeping or observing an area, but there was also an observer there. And looking at this observer, especially in my whiteboard session, it had a lot of data looking at function and functionality. The observer was looking at, what's the operation capacity of this object? How does it work? How does it operate? How does it function? Those are, I think, the high points. I just make sure there's nothing else significant in here. And then just talking about the discovery here. There was that discovery there, and just looking at the energetics behind it. And back to that swirling, electromagnetic shape there. So there we have it.
Dennis?
Yeah.
About the spherical object, you mentioned it a couple of times. Like did you say it was like observing? Is that what you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't even know if this is a connection or not, but I remember reading years ago, there was a UFO researcher named Bill Hamilton. Mm-hmm. He was really quite extraordinary. In fact, he was very active during the time that Bob Lazar was just kind of coming out. So Hamilton was writing all about Area 51, all about California's Antelope Valley, where they're also testing, tested a lot of exotic tech. And he got a story from some witness he interviewed. I said they went into an underground facility around this time, around 1990 or so. And there were these spherical, hovering, observing things. They were like centuries.
Yeah.
He's writing about this in 1990. This is over 30 years ago. Like these, that's amazing. Super highly, I'm sure that's what he described them as. And that's all I kept thinking about.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely got the sense that it was observing whatever it was doing. It was watching. Wow, fascinating. Well, great job by everybody. I love there's a lot of crossover data, and Daz, I'll let you comment on that as well. Just the corroboration and I'd say the division of work in what we brought back was astounding on this one. Nice job, everybody.
Yeah, definitely. From my job as the project manager and a bit of an analyst on it, seeing all the data together and it's easier and better seeing you guys go through it as well, to get your impressions of it. There's a lot of there's a huge wealth of corroborative data there, which in my opinion, you guys did this blind. It accurately kind of details the events that Bob Lazar said he went through, and in my opinion as well, it adds more credibility to his story.
He needs to see this. Bob Lazar's got to see this. Someone's got to get this to him.
Well, I am speaking to Jeremy Corbell about this as well.
Yeah. So do it.
He's seen some of the IRV sessions and stuff. But I'm sure we'll make we can make the video privately available to him. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well,
who's which one is?
Yeah.
So you had I don't want to keep talking here, but you had a really freaky thing where you someone identified you or detected you. And they basically said, you want to understand this. And all I kept thinking is, it's 35 years ago, 34 years ago. So how does that work?
Well, that's a very interesting dynamic to remote viewing, because here we are remote viewing something in a DAS, you opened up the target to a window of a time span. So we consciously, as remote viewers, move to that, and based on the conscious awareness or capacity for conscious awareness of the person or individuals at the site where we are visiting as remote viewers, this happens to me quite frequently, but it really depends. Now, I'm a firm believer, as remote viewers, we don't have a special skill set. We don't have some special DNA, anything going on in our mind. That every human on Earth has this ability. It's just that we're aware of these abilities to varying degrees. And as trained remote viewers, I think you're getting a good solid head nod from everybody here. But there are those, and in this case, somebody who was operating the vessel or in charge of it instantly directed his conscious awareness to me. Now, I suspect he probably didn't care where or when I was, but he just simply said, this is not for you, and I'm busy, and literally just picked me up and put me out of his mind. And he was strong enough that when I went back in and visualized him and tried to get his attention, he was like, I'm busy here, leave me alone. And I have experienced this multiple times, countless times. Anybody else have a good, story there to correlate or analogy there?
Yeah,
that happened to me
once.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daz.
I was just gonna say I experienced it only once in my life when I did a past target, and it was I didn't know what it at the time, but it turned out to be the esoteric magician Aleister Crowley, in the middle of one of his sex magic kind of things. And I was just, I went into this house of my subconscious, and I saw all these people engaging in like a sexual orgy, and everyone in the room, there were like 50 people in the room, just all turned their heads, stopped what they were doing, and looked in the direction of where my consciousness was. And that was it. I was out of there. That was the only time I've ever experienced it. But it is an amazing question, because it's like, did I go back in? Did I affect time backwards, or did that happen? Did we go and visit these things in the past, and it's only realized in the future?
Adhering to the protocols that we're taught, we are passive observers, as opposed to going back and influencing or attempting to change, or I'm quite certain that individual didn't flip a different switch because he saw me in his mind. Dick, you had something you wanted to share.
Richard will like this one. The guy that taught us, the military guy that taught us remote viewing, Glenn Wheaton, is really adamant about keeping ufology out of remote viewing. He says it's joined at the hip and he doesn't like it. And he said, we don't do UFO targets. And very rarely in the like 15 years I trained with him, maybe 2 or 3. And he gave us a target one night in class and we're working it. And I'm picking up a secure facility with a lot of radar antennas and a lot of electronic emanations like satellite and communications, but it's real secure and it's like spying stuff. And there's a guy at a console and he's doing stuff. And then I looked and I saw the curve of the earth and I'm like, wow, I'm looking down on Earth. That's really beautiful. And then I see that it's on a screen. I go, God, this is a structure looking down on Earth. And I went to look and I was face to face with a bug-eyed one of the aliens. And I go, God. And he went like silly earthling, like, wow, that's a good job getting here. Now get out of here. And I was afraid to draw that in my session. I like, Glenn, that is not a session that Glenn would ever give us. But we're taught to like whatever anything goes through your mind, put it down on paper. So I drew that and turned it in. He looks at me, he goes, see, I give you interesting targets once in a while. And the target was Dan Brown, the guy that wrote Above Black. He claims that he was in the Air Force.
Dan Sherman.
Dan Sherman.
Yes.
Dan Brown. He wrote the Da Vinci Code. Yeah, Dan Sherman. It was Dan Sherman. And I swear to God, I saw this communication with alien. And Glenn told me the facility that I drew was the NSA facility that Dan Sherman had been at. Okay, so we worked that, and it was kind of a wink and a kind of haha, and I was that true? And he goes, I don't know. What do you think? So I'm listening to Art Bell one night, and Art Bell has Dan Sherman on, and Art Bell goes, okay, west of the Rockies, hello, caller. And I hear my teacher's voice, and he's going, yeah, when you got the traffic, and he started asking technical questions about how the NSA worked. And Dan Sherman said, I can tell you're in the business by the terminology. He goes, yeah, 20 years. And so he has a conversation with Dan Sherman. And it was Glenn, who never gives UFO targets, was calling into Art Bell. And I just worked that target a month before for him. But he said the Sherman story checked out from someone that worked. But yeah, I had a similar to I was aware of this thing, and it felt like it became aware of me and went, go away.
Dick, we also had a very similar experience when we both worked for Farsight on the Phoenix Lights. We both had communications with the beings on the Phoenix Lights as well.
Oh yeah, the Phoenix Lights. Yeah. Oh, that one was way more open to giving me information. Yeah, I forget we do so much. That was like 12 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
I'd have to go back and look at that.
But yeah, you're right. Richard's right. The implications of this, of us having a communication with something that happened in the past in real time now, it bends your mind. It hurts your head thinking about it.
Well, Richard, I'll have a separate conversation with you outside of this. We just did a target that we were given Napoleon. And I did a real good job of describing Napoleon. I saw his death mask really clearly. I go, this is a famous person. That's his death mask. I saw it. And so it was double blind. I didn't know who it was, but I knew it was somebody that had a death mask. So before feedback, I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to put something in the death mask. Let's see if I can affect that. So we're doing experiments to see if remote viewing can go from the passive to the active. If remote viewing is true, then information has to move. If we remote viewed Bob Lazar in 1989 at S4 from Hawaii, from Maryland, from Europe, information had to move. So if information can move passively to us, can we go to target and actively influence the target and how much gain would we have? And I'll show you a picture. I haven't published this yet, but there's a picture and there's something in his death mask that I wrote out before I got feedback. I would write a word and an image, the little Nemo mask, and swear to God, they're there. You can kind of see him. But
On Napoleon's death mask?
Yeah, and I have no like I can't go to the Napoleon death mask website and affect that photo. Like I can't go Photoshop it. You can go download it, something that's been there for years, and we'll see if I'm getting way off topic here. That'll be a whole other.
Wait. Are you saying you perceived this mark on his death mask? Or
No,
that
I'm saying I
caused
intended to put it there. There's
there.
something that I intended to put there.
and it's there.
And I told these guys that I did it before they gave me the target feedback. I have that time stamped. I said,
Yeah, you did say that.
there's a
before
death mask.
Yep.
And I'm going to put this word and this symbol on it.
And then we're going all Mandela effect here, because like you're going back in time and you're affecting something that happened 200 years ago. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, that's what I call it. I call it.
Past. Yeah.
I call it footsteps in time, footprints.
You're really freaking me out here now. That's really...
Well, we've been doing this for 25 years at a high level, and we're trying to like see what, take it out for a run and see how fast you can go.
Yeah, I'm about 22 years into my remote viewing journey, and I'll tell you, and I'm sure everybody's heard this, is we're more than the sum of our parts, and in the human experience, we're more than the sum of our experiences. And so you think, people grow up, they go to college, they get a job, they learn a bunch of skills. The reason I have the greatest level of respect for remote viewers is because we have been to these places, and our experiences in our life now folds in that we've been at S4 with Bob Lazar. We've stood next to the pyramid while they were being constructed. A target that I worked years ago. I was standing.
You guys did that?
I was standing on the bow of a vessel, and I saw dusty tens of thousands of people moving around, and I knew it was a port, and I knew I was on a river, and I could see structure in the background, and I thought, what am I on? And I turned around, and there was a single stone block and the vessel was the boat, it was so huge it could hold one block, but there were more. It was like a steady stream of them. And so having stood on the bow of the vessel, bringing in one of the giant stones the pyramid was constructed of, I remember a target Glenn gave us. It was, it looked dusty, and there was something fluttering, and it was definitely a metal structure. And he's holding the manila envelope, and he says, before I break this open, anybody want to guess what this is? And I blurred out, it's the alien base on Mars. And he looks at me, and he kind of giggles, and he opens this up, and he says, near term future permanent human settlement, Mars. That was the target. And I was like, I'm sold. Okay, I'm here. You have my attention now. So
Richard, seeing the data that we've provided tonight for the first time, and you haven't seen all of it because we've skirted through it, and they're also whiteboard. Yeah, each of the viewers here did 10-15 minutes live on a whiteboard as well, blind. What do you think about the quality of data? And as a second question, bearing in mind we're doing this kind of ad hoc with no budget, just a few people bunched together. Can you imagine what applications we could really put remote viewing to really get to the heart of the UAP problem if there were concerted efforts?
I've been thinking that, and can't we assume that somewhere there are people just like you, probably being paid very well in deeply classified settings, doing exactly that? Have to think.
Yeah.
Have to think it.
So. Yeah.
Most definitely. What struck me was, the consistency. Overall, there was like tremendous consistency that all of you had. And then a lot of themes just kept coming up. So dimensions kept coming up, time distortions, time travel kept coming up. And that really impressed me a lot. The energetics, that phrase came up. Many of you had that exact phrase, energetic. Where does that just come from? You just throw that right in there.
I want to show you one more frame of my whiteboard that I didn't.
And the writing too. I just wanted to come back to that because that
yeah.
was one thing Lazar definitely did refer to, was that he, I'm trying to remember exactly now. I wish I had my notes in front, but I know he made a reference to something that looked like potentially alien writing. I know that he said something about that. So presumably there would be this attempt to decipher that writing or to try to read it in some way. Anyway, I didn't want to interrupt you.
We need to, well, no, I interrupted you. We need to show this, all of our data to Lazar and see if some of it, ideally the home run is a bit of our data that he goes, yeah, and I never told anybody that. That's true. And I never told. Here's the last thing I got at the whiteboard. Well, I'm standing there. Is that showing this? It's showing a black
We
screen.
don't see the screen yet, it's just a black screen.
Hang on.
It popped up for a second.
Yeah, just for a moment.
What the hell?
While Dick's working to pull that off, Richard, one of the other things that's great about what the team does, we have an analyst as well. And when our analyst is able to take everybody's data and compile it and look at a trained remote viewing analyst, because there's different things that they look for, and she pulls things out and really puts the whole story together after a session. It's just fascinating to see.
That's the necessary piece to all of this.
Yeah,
is the data analysis and really preparing a coherent report. Out of this is really what it's about.
The statistical significance of the group of remote viewers, absolutely. And I love the fact, Daz, there's not one instance of Buddha in your backyard.
Not only that, but the hits that you guys were getting, like there were things that might appear kind of far out, but actually everything struck me as either directly relevant or potentially relevant and on target. Like there was nothing that seemed really wacky in relation to the Lazar story. Not that anyone had. It all seemed
I like the fact that Derek pulled out the element 115.
Element 115?
Well. Yeah,
come on.
Where did that come from?
That was huge.
Because that's what Lazar is known for, is element 115.
That was the big
I
deal.
saw someone, my handwriting's terrible. Who Naim, that was you, Naim.
Naim.
Yeah.
You wrote in your notes, I saw LAN, and I didn't know if there was something else because you went past it, but I kept thinking this wouldn't really be relevant, but I thought LANL is Los Alamos National Labs, which was where Lazar worked, but I didn't recall if you had an L there. I thought I saw an LAN in your notes, but that may not mean. And then some of you described like something built into mountains or hillsides, which was exactly what Lazar talked about. The do not enter feeling. I'm looking at my notes for you, Naim, and the vaulted doors. You had a lot of really great shit in there, just like everybody did, frankly. The dead bodies. My God, this all.
And Richard, we can provide you copies of all the RV sessions and stuff. And
gobble it up for breakfast. I would just love reading.
If you want us to do anything further, and you use the stuff in any way, then just let us know. We're all here, available for you.
In the concept of the body, I'm thinking again, as in the window of opportunity of the target of a couple of months. Okay, so we're dealing with, it's the probability we're dealing with a recovered alien craft suggests that bodies would have been involved at some point, even though that wasn't a primary portion of the target. We're talking secondary, tertiary data. It's there somewhere, and so I'm not surprised.
I mean, if Richard would probably know this more than me, but if memory serves me right, I think Bob Lazar said he spent some time reading official reports for a few days, and I think one of those detailed EBE kind of bodies and dissections, all that kind of stuff.
I don't remember if you just read about bodies. We should ask him, but he definitely did. I think he said he had 2 days where he was reviewing data before he did a single thing, before he saw a craft or anything like that. And as I mentioned, he learned about 2 programs that I know he discussed. One was called Project Galileo. That was like a propulsion project, I believe. And then the other one was called Looking Glass, and that was physics of time travel. And by the way, many of you mentioned wormholes. And I just kept thinking, 20 years ago, roughly almost 20 years ago, Dr. Eric Davis, who many people are familiar with, wrote a paper for what was then the ATIP program as a subcontractor to Robert Bigelow's BASS organization, which was working with ATIP. And it was a paper on traversable wormholes. So you've had high-level people looking into this these possibilities for a while. I think there's a lot of folks who've been suspecting this. And many of you were talking about wormholes and things like that.
I've got a little more wormhole data. It just occurred to me, Richard, that we weren't introduced, and my screen doesn't show. My screen shows CryptoViewing. My name is Richard too. I'm actually Dick Allgire. If you missed that, let me show you this is what I got at the whiteboard. Is I saw like a bunch of layers, and there was a hole through the layers, and I got the idea that this thing moves from one layer to the other by switching frequencies. Like it changes its frequency and it goes instantly to another dimension.
This is what physics are talking about, this exact thing. I mean, there's a universe right in front of your nose.
At the
whiteboard.
whiteboard, I have no idea about that. I've never studied that, and physics is outside of my realm of what I've done. But my idea was that, like, I said I'm sitting here with a 2-dimensional board trying to be in 3-dimensional, explaining 9-dimensional string theory. But it's just these layers go out. I can't see the edges of them, but they're stacked up and there's holes, and you can get from one to the other just by changing frequency. And now you see it, now you don't, and you go to the next. I explain it for about 8 or 10 minutes at the whiteboard. So we'll look at that. We need to get all this data to Bob Lazar.
He has to see this. He's got to see this video and your data. And
as I said, I've been tentatively speaking to Jeremy. Once we've done the video, though, we can put it up on a private area. Or if Richard's got he only knows me from a quick contact that as a third party contact. So if Richard has a better way of getting to him to show him the stuff,
we'll talk about it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I bet a lot of people are trying to contact him these days, about now.
I'm not too close with Bob. I mean, we've met, but briefly, and I think we like each other, but I haven't really communicated with him. I know Jeremy and George Knapp quite well. I'm sure this would not be difficult to get to Bob Lazar. No way. He'll want to see this. I've got to think.
All I've got to say is, if that's the case, Bob Lazar, good to meet you. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for the experience. I think, yeah.
I saw an interview with him years ago. I haven't really studied his story in depth, but my sense of him was like, I believe that guy. I think he sounds like he's telling the truth to me.
I watched him on Joe Rogan. I watched his Joe Rogan interview and was very impressed by Mr. Dolan, you had mentioned, after your interactions with him, there was a level of consistency. And what they say is, like, for people, the stories often change if they're not being completely forthright. Little details, minor things change, and everything seems to correlate. It doesn't change for him. Well,
the consistency I got wasn't from when I met him, but it was from reading all of the transcripts of his interviews from 1990 thereabouts. And watching the video he created back in the early 90s, in fact, about the craft and the physics of that. And I think he's always been completely consistent. Even under periods of great duress, he has always been he's never changed it. And, you know, I've defended Bob Lazar now for, since I've really studied him for at least 15 years or more, when I really started to dive in and understand him. And as I was saying, I think before we were recording, I took a fair amount of hell from some other people in the UFO field at that time. When one of my books, I think I spent about 12 pages writing about Lazar's story, and I totally supported him, and I still do. And I'm very glad that I did that, because I definitely think he's a truthful guy.
Well, and for all that time, he didn't try to cash in on the story either. And I think that's hugely significant. He told the story and then he just kind of disappeared. He wasn't out there writing books and trying to sell things and make money off the story.
I would agree. Yeah.
So that's huge.
Yeah, I think he seemed like someone who just didn't give a crap, and he just told his story, and that's what it was.
Yeah. And then he
At
moved
what
on.
point in your life, Richard, did you go, this is what I'm going to study? You know, this is what made you.
It was about 30 years ago. I left a PhD program in history. I was studying that to become a professor, and I just became obsessed with the UFO subject around 93, 94. And I didn't start off thinking, oh yes, I'm going to change my entire life and do this. But I was interested enough to take what I thought would be a 2 or 3 month side road and just dive into it. I was studying Harry Truman's presidency, the Cold War, and all of that. And I read a copy of Timothy Good's book, Above Top Secret, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up.
I love that. I love that book.
It's a great book. It's a classic. And I remembered looking at that book thinking, oh, I know about this guy. I read his autobiography. Wait, UFOs? I read about this department. UFOs? What's all this? So I had this, it was like a schizophrenic version of reality. And I thought, well, there's official truth and then there's this unofficial stuff, but this looks like it might be true also. What is the actual truth? And I was studying that very period of time, the late 1940s, early 50s, where the UFO subject was very important. And I thought I didn't like having this big question mark hanging over my head in an area where I was trying to become an expert. And I thought, I just want to find out. Knowing that the academic world was definitely not amenable to that. But I thought, well, I'll just do this on my own. But it became an absolute obsession. I just could not let it go, because I quickly decided for myself that, oh yeah, this is whatever the truth was. I just wanted to know, was this of historical validity? Was this something the U.S. national security community was into? If they were into it, why? And that just one question led to another, and the next thing I was totally hooked.
Did you ever talk with John Mack?
One time, not long before he died. So I met John Mack. I've known a lot of his colleagues subsequently, but I met John Mack one and only one time at if you remember back in 2002, the Sci-Fi Channel, I think, they did a TV series. What was that called? It was all on abductions. It was called Taken. Yeah. It was like this multi-part. It was really well.
Spielberg one.
Yeah, it was a Spielberg thing. So I was a new guy in the UFO field at that time, but I was invited to attend this Sci-Fi Channel function in New York City. Like, it was this big party for the series. I thought, hell, I'll go there. Bud Hopkins was there. John Mack was there. Dave Jacobs and a lot of other folks were there. And that's where I met John Mack. Oh. And we chatted like ever so briefly. He didn't know who I was really. But it was nice to meet him. I definitely admire his books. He's one of the best writers that the UFO field ever had. Very insightful man.
For those listening, John Mack was a professor at Harvard of psychiatry, a well-known psychiatrist who was looking at people who claimed to be abducted because he thought that was an interesting field of craziness, that they had some psychological or psychiatric problem. And after interviewing enough of them, said, hey, I'm telling you the truth. Yeah. And he's the reason that I'm talking with you today. I was a television newscaster back in the day, 30 years ago. in Hawaii, and I used to drive from the windward side of Oahu over through the mountains and the forest to Honolulu in the early morning, in the early afternoon. This was prior to the internet, and I would listen to news radio. So I'd hear the headlines to know, just to be brief before I was going to work in the afternoon, and coming back at night at 11 o'clock after the late news, that news station would be on, and it was the Art Bell show.
Yeah.
So I'm driving home and I'm listening to Art Bell interviewing John Mack, and I'm going, this guy doesn't sound crazy. This guy sounds very credible. This is a very intelligent man. And I sat in my car and listened to that. And one of the next shows I listened to was Courtney Brown on remote viewing, and Lynn Buchanan and the others. And I thought, if remote viewing is true, I've got to learn that. So, and one thing led to another, and here we are.
I got into remote viewing while I was studying UFOs, and I didn't want to take a whole dive into that because I was trying to learn about this other subject. But the thing that got me with remote viewing was when I learned, what was the book where I first read? It was the really, well, actually, I don't like this guy at all.
I know the one.
He was a debunker. He did a crop circle book too.
Jim Schnabel.
Schnabel, yeah.
Yep.
That was the first book I read that dealt with remote viewing, and you could tell, by the way, he was kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So what he talked about, that remote viewing was real, but I noticed every time a UFO thing came in, he went out of his way to just kind of knock it down a little bit. But he was talking about, like, I think he mentioned the Ingo Swann event there, and he talked about McMonagle, and I thought, like, are these people all bumping into ET? Are all these remote viewers bumping into ET? And I thought, if that's the case, what the hell is that all about? So I really did want to know, and I just became as a side interest, I became always interested in remote viewing early on. And I mean, but you are all next level remote viewers. In my opinion, you're all just so high level. Really.
Thank you. It's
In
humbling.
my early days
I'm
getting
humbled.
into remote viewing, I was into looking at UFO stuff, and your book AD, After Disclosure, that was, I was reading that back when I was just getting into remote viewing, so it's kind of coming full circle now. So
That book's
pretty
that
cool.
book's getting a little old now too. It's 13 years old, that book.
My one thought on the book Above Top Secret, there is a quote from it. I thought it was the one thing that almost like it's the shot that rang across the world for me when I read that was, he wrote, we must have been visited by races that just barely had the technology to get here and back home in a lifetime to report what they had discovered, all the way across the spectrum to entities that are so advanced that when we're walking on the beach at low tide and you kick over a rock and you see all that stuff slithering under the rock, and you're somewhat repulsed, and you put the rock back, and before you've taken a single step past that rock, you will never ever think of those things again. So there must have been entities that have been recoiled and just disgusted by their discovery of life on our planet, to the point that before they left our solar system, they didn't even make an entry in their log. They just and moved on. So that has resonated with me for years, ever since I read that.
You mentioned Tim Good. He's retired now. He's not really active any longer. But one of his later interviews, I should say, was with Regina Meredith over at Gaia TV. She's really great. And I wish I could have remembered this offhand, but he had gotten to the point. This is like very mature Tim Good, like end of his career type Tim Good, basically. And I know he was talking like similarly. So there are multiple types of groups. There's just like, there's a bunch of them, and they're here, and some of them are just totally beyond our level, I think he was saying, and others are, much more kind of in tune with our level. Wish I could remember. It was with Richie Meredith. It was really interesting.
Do you think that maybe they terraformed this place, made it, and made us, changed the DNA, inserted DNA? Have you ever considered that?
I've definitely considered it, and that whole question got me into my own side study of the last 5 years of paleoanthropology. It's just a completely different thing, had nothing to do with UFOs. But I've been into it because I'm trying to answer the question myself. Is like, what is there a hole in our history that we don't know of? And have we been tweaked? Have we been genetically modified? So I've definitely entertained it. I haven't really, to my satisfaction, seen anything that screams at me saying, yes, we were definitely modified. I used to think that. I don't think that I believe that at this time, but I do think that we've been observed for quite a while. I think we've been observed for a fairly long time. I think that someone mentioned 10,000 years. Oh, that was Lazar. Bob Lazar said that he'd heard that. That would actually make sense. 10,000 years is when human beings really started to gather together into larger communities. Prior to that, it would have been difficult. We were really scattered in very small numbers in these very tiny groups. It would have been difficult, I think. But once you're starting to gather in cities, I think it would make more sense.
I think we get into that the realm of all the heat that Graham Hancock has taken for his theory on the Younger Dryas, in the sense that humanity or intelligent life on Earth could be tens of or hundreds of thousands of years old, which is literally just a blip on the radar in terms of the amount of time Earth has been habitable, right? So from the time there's oxygen and water to drink and food sources, we're talking about hundreds of millions of years. So, and the amount of time we have been here is so small. I'm taking my son on a trip to Japan. We're going to dive the ruins at Yonaguni, which cool. we're talking 60 to 100 feet underwater, arguably, questionably carved by somebody. Somebody. Now, and so there's some history, and again, that like the quote from Timothy Good from Graham Hancock, the one thing that resonates with me is yes, there's a forgotten piece of our own history. We are a species with amnesia. I absolutely firmly believe that. So
didn't we just work that with Hellfire? Was that Darby's target, the event that caused the end of the Younger Dryas? Is that what we looked at?
That's coming out in a few weeks. Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, stop talking and give me the target ID.
Richard,
you might not want to. Sorry, you might not want to answer this, or you might just say no comment, or maybe. But I would think you have some sources maybe that say to you, when my non-disclosure is when I get out of my non-disclosure, I'll tell you something. I got some things to tell you. Just stand by. I'm waiting for the non-disclosure agreement to
Here's the thing. I only have a very few people where I've had that type of a relationship with, and none of them have said when my non-disclosure runs out. They've all basically said when I die. Those are the ones that I've talked to, like, who have told me things that are really interesting. But especially in the last couple of years, since I've done a bit less travel with COVID. Maybe I'll pick it up again. But every now and then, yes, someone has said something extraordinary to me, but not that often. Like, all of the information that I work with, 99.9% of it is just open source or things that I'll get from people that are open interviews that I can talk about. There's a couple of folks in there who've just said absolutely under no conditions can you mention who I am. That's been once in a blue moon, very rare. And I don't actually even want too much of that information because, it's hard for me to, I would want it to work for my own private theorizing, I suppose, but it's hard for me to work with it publicly anyway.
And it's hard when you have all that information compartmentalized and classified information, you have conversations like this. Sometimes you really have to mind your P's and Q's and make sure, I hope I don't go over the line, and pull that little piece in there and kind of blow your source.
Dennis was in military intelligence, so
yeah, absolutely.
Where do you clearly there's a gradual disclosure underway? Where do you think it's going?
I think it's a battle. I think it's a fight within the national security apparatus. So I'm not sure if it's an intentional disclosure. In fact, I think the fight's still going on. I personally believe, I call the two groups now the insurgency. And then I've reverted to an old phrase used by Donald Kehoe back in the 50s called the secrecy group. I think that's a pretty good phrase for them. So I think there's still a very strong secrecy contingent that continues to fight all of this. And they're not done. They are not done. They have a lot of folks in the media absolutely on their side. I've been predicting that David Grush, who was the biggest of the whistleblowers, I guess, last month, he's in danger of dying a death by 1,000 cuts if he's not careful. I could just see the media going after him and just trying to chip away at his credibility, which they're already starting to do, some of them. So I don't think it's an intentional disclosure process. Although what I would hasten to add is those guys, the ones running the secrecy, I think they're like the Bobby Fischer chess masters of the world. Like they are 10 moves ahead of the rest of us.
They're on a big long con right now. Yeah, absolutely.
So that if they have to modify their position, they'll disclose what they have to disclose. I think
I agree.
Yeah, it's like the UFO secrets is like a mountain, and if they can take off just a sliver of the mountain and say, "Here you go," they'll do that, and they'll just play defense very effectively for as many years or decades or centuries as they have to.
Especially if we were living in a world where there were competing races of intelligent entities vying over how society on Earth evolves in the near term. I could almost picture a world in which that particular group has help from somebody with the equivalent of a 500 IQ for us. So way over the top.
I think they all know. I'm sorry. No, finish your thought there.
Yeah. And then I think separately, there could be other groups that are combined and they're wanting peace to play out, and maybe the laissez-faire, the guiding hand of fate or God to come in and really make everything better and work for the best. But it's really like the problem, the way I see it, it's monetary economics. Honestly, that's what's slowing us down. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, there's just so much. We could be talking about this all night. But I think every group that observes us knows that we're going through the transformation right now. That is from, I keep calling it the fourth stage of humanity. We hundreds of thousands of years, millions as hunters and gatherers, last 10,000 years doing agriculture, creating, the Roman Empire and all of that. Last few hundred years, science and industry, which revolutionized us again. And now we're doing something different. Transhumanism, AI, nanotech, 24/7 surveillance, complete digital control of the entire world. This is totally different. Complete information management on a scale that is qualitatively different than anything else we've ever seen. And it's going to take us into their world. That's what I believe. And I think they know this. And so, and I don't think of progress as this linear thing. I think of it as jumps, like the valence of an electron valence, like you jump from this level to this one to this one. And that's what we're now doing. And it's going to put us on, I think, this is just me, a rough parity with at least some of these groups. We may not be quite surpassing, but we'll be very close. I think within a century, maybe we'll be very close. And I think they know this, and they're probably thinking, all right, so what do we do about these humans?
Yeah.
Because we're quite aggressive. I mean, in fact, we are a warlike species. It's how we got our intelligence. We didn't just, it's not like the war and the violence is this side thing. It's integral to what we are. It's integral to our development. That's just the fact. We're aggressive. We've got a lot of ambition and innovation, and that comes from just the kind of competitive species that we are. I don't think we can help it. So I don't know what's going to happen with all of that.
I think some of that growth, I think, was possibly seeded to us as well as removing, like you mentioned, transhumanism, and a lot of this tech. And what we're seeing is just this merging of the minds and the tech. We've looked at some things where maybe they dropped some things here and there for us to go in this direction. And that could then put that frequency in there where it's going to control that warlike urge that people have down the line. So who knows?
I personally think, I've come to think, especially talking with my wife, Tracy, who's done a fair amount of remote viewing, she's quite good as well. I think that the missing piece to all visions of the human future is what you guys do. It's this capability that allows human beings to surpass space and time as we understand it. That's not something that's factored into all the futuristic scenarios of where the human race is going, and also of our whatever future relationship we may have with these other beings. It seems to me, I've felt stronger and stronger about this over the years, that this quality that human beings have, that all of you are showing at such a high level, I'm really believing that this is a real key to our future and a real key to what we are. And I suspect if I were a super intelligent telepathic alien that had mastery of space-time, I would be looking at you guys as particularly of interest for where humanity is going.
I have
Go ahead,
5.
Derek.
Oh, sorry. I have 5 boys, 17, 13, 12, and twin 9-year-olds living at home. And my 17-year-old and 12-year-old are learning to remote view. They're very interested in what they have seen. I think it is. It's the next step in human evolution. I would love for some future state where in kindergarten every child was taught to remote view.
I think it might have been something we were much better at in our past, frankly, that we may only now be rediscovering. I've just wondered. Our brains are smaller than they were 10,000, 20,000 years ago.
Yeah, they burned
We've lost the equivalent of and so I wonder what we've lost. The brain's always reorganizing. Evolution never stops. It's constantly going. And but I've often wondered that ancient people might have had a much higher actual survival need for psychic gifts, just to be completely in touch with their natural environment. And that once we started living in towns and cities, that skill might have been too expensive for the human body, and it might have atrophied slightly.
It's a muscle.
I'm just wondering.
And if you don't flex it, you lose the ability to use it.
Wonder.
So and there's a lot of noise that distracts from that intuitive, because it's so quiet and so subtle. You can almost miss it. It's that dismissive thought where it's like, no. And then, a day later, you're like, oh, maybe I should have followed that because it was right. What a coincidence. And then you dismiss it. But it's when you start taking that tiny little signal and looking at it, and it expands.
It's like the practice of prayer or meditation, it seems to me. You've got to get into a quiet place to hear. You got to, it's like super quiet music, right? We live in a world of total distractions all the time. Noise. We're on, our phones, and we're just like constantly interacting with media. It's so noisy. And I have this feeling like we're moving into a society that's just increasing the noise and also increasing the propaganda, the mind control, all that stuff. And so I wonder, like, this skill that we have and that you guys show to such a high degree, I almost wonder if you're going against the grain.
It reminds me of the Native American concept of listening to the wind. And the strong belief that the universe and the environment and your daily life tells you everything you need to know without ever saying a word. If you just listen to the world and the universe around you, there will never be a surprise.
Growing up in a very mechanistic worldview, that would sound so ridiculous and silly, but actually, I think I've never heard that. That's beautiful, and it actually could make a lot of sense to me.
And you think about the tech. I mean, what does the tech do? It mimics this intuition, especially as we're looking at things like Neuralink, the ability to know something because your brain's connected to Google,
right?
You know, or right now, just going on my phone and looking at Google as an extension of my thought process to access information, you know, so it's really mimicking, I think, what is a natural ability that we all have in us.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, I hope I can watch this video later, because I'll just want to study what you guys said about the whole Bob Lazar thing.
Absolutely. As soon as we've cut this up into the segments, we'll send you links so you can.
You guys blew me away. Honestly, I was just shocked.
I'm glad we did, because my thinking is, now that you've seen what we can do, if you in the future, if you now have some questions somewhere UAP that has a UAP kind of.
Oh hell, man! Well, I don't want to overload you with aliens and flying saucers, but
obviously don't tell us right now. But sometime in the near future we can maybe work out a project working with you on.
Okay,
on
it's a deal, man. It's a deal. I still want to chat with you, Daz, about Ingo. I haven't forgotten. We're both having. I haven't really followed up on my research on that in the last month. I've been doing a few things, but I want to return to that. I'm interested in the Axelrod story and really diving into that.
I've been absolutely looking at. I reread Penetration twice again, made all the notes. Yes. So it would be good to try that.
And your 8 Martinis was a few back with the moon stuff from Ingo. That was an awesome read too. Daz he did some writing on that and shared a lot of Ingo stuff.
Oh, I've got to get that.
Okay.
I've downloaded all the PDFs. I have to read those.
That's well worth your time looking at what Daz put together on
I
one about the moon stuff. And
I believe it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The thing is there's so much happening in the world right now, isn't there, with all the UAP disclosure stuff, that it's just gone crazy, really.
That's just one part of it, but yes.
So much
keeps us all busy. Keeps me busy.
Daz, I watched that for the second time just like 3 days ago.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, any other comments or questions before we wrap it up?
I just want to thank Richard for taking the time to be part of this, and we look forward to working with you and sharing this with you. So I don't know how much access we'll give you to all the information we got, but I think we'll give you as much as you want, and feel free to do with it as you wish as well, I guess.
Well, thank you. I just want to say, those of you in Europe, so Daz and Demi, I think are you both like robots? It's got to be like 5 a.m. where you are, 4 a.m. How do you do this?
4 a.m. for me. Demi, is it 6 for you?
6 a.m. for me, yes.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yes, of course. I wanted so much to be here, so it doesn't.
Astonished. Well,
it's almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Hawaii, and it's 80 degrees and beautiful.
Oh, you poor guy.
There.
It's about 11 o'clock here. My wife's been in twice asking me when I'm coming to bed. So
we're in the same time zone. Yes, it's 11 here.
Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania.
Richard,
it's 11 o'clock.
Thank you for spending some time with us, and
it
was absolutely my pleasure.
And thanks for all the information you've put out over all the years. We appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, and welcome back, Edward. I see you there. Yeah, I'm very, very honored to be here with you guys. You're all just extraordinary.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Thank you, and thank you to Dick and to Demi for joining us tonight and sharing your data. That was a great addition.
Thanks, guys.
Great to see you guys. Nice to see you, Demi. I love seeing you. Great working with you again. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Demi.
Yeah, and for those of you watching out there, let the comments fly. Let's get the discussion going. Let us know your thoughts on this. What are you seeing in the data as well? What are you piecing together? What does it all mean? Let's tell the story and keep the conversation going. So again, thank you to Demi and to Richard for joining us this evening. And on behalf of Daz, Edward, Dick, Naim, and the rest of the Crypto Viewing team, I'm Dennis Nappy II. Thanks for watching.
To see more of our amazing work, get a membership today at ffgrv.com. Get the Explorer membership, it's the cheapest one. Then go binge watch all the remote viewing, see what we're about. That's the news from Hawaii. Aloha.